The Fancounters Celebrity Podcast, number 150. Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast.
You were like the carrot top of interviewers.
Wow, how disappointing was that question?
You did not just ask me that.
It's a very big question.
Never mind, I'm done. I'm not doing the show.
Wow, I can't believe it. I'm telling you, I'm hooked.
Nick.
Yeah, he's so awesome. He's a good friend of mine.
Welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. My name's Nick. Thank you so much for being here. If it's your first time to the show, where have you been? We've had 150 episodes now. We are going strong. We've got a great back catalog of material for you to go back and listen to. We can keep you busy literally for hours. Today on the show, we've got a great guest. It took a long time to track down this guest. I sent him Facebook messages almost 6 months ago, probably. Never responded to them, and I had to resort to some internet sleuthing to find this gentleman. And he is here on the show today, and I'm talking about the youngest member of the Cleaver family from the new Leave It To Beaver. It's Troy Davidson. He played Wally's son, and we're going to hear from him in just a little bit. But first, we've got this to take care of.
And now, shocking celebrity news of the week.
In our shocking celebrity news of the week, I've got one story, and it hits home for me personally. I saw an ad on Instagram, I believe, for one of my favorite music artists, Avril Lavigne. Avril Lavigne was going to host a concert this past Saturday night. It's going to be it was her only performance of 2020. That's how it was pitched, that you could see the only concert from Avril in 2020 if you paid the money to watch the show live. And of course, the link would be available for hours after. But I paid the money. I paid $25. That was the lowest you could pay to watch the stream. You could have paid like $165, and that got you access to the pre-show sound check, as well as a live Q&A with Avril, but I didn't do that. And after I saw what the show was, I'm really glad I didn't. So it was pitched again as the only concert that we would have from Avril in 2020, and it sort of was, but what we really bought access to was a commercial to fight Lyme disease. As you know, Avril Lavigne suffered from Lyme disease. Suffers. I'm not really sure if it's past or present or current or what, but she is an advocate for that charity. And I don't have a problem supporting charities. I write a lot of checks to a lot of different charities that have great causes, but not knowing exactly that this was just to watch a commercial for Lyme disease and hear from the founders of the organization, some celebrities I've never heard of talk about their experience with Lyme disease, or even just talking about the importance of funding the organization. Because remember, it was supposed to be a concert for Avril Lavigne. Now, Avril did sing 4 songs during this 1-hour show. The problem with the songs is that they were very pre-produced. She did them on a green screen soundstage. So they put in the first song, they put in a New York City type background with a lot of neon lights and that kind of thing. And there was lots of cut shots. I don't think any shot stayed on the screen for more than 2 or 3 seconds. So it was very music video-esque. The next song she did, maybe 10 minutes later, was in a warehouse setting. Again, lots of cuts. The third and fourth song came at the very end of the program, and that was just with like a black background. So she did 4 songs. 3 of them you knew. One of them was For This Cause, and that was it. We did get music from Rob Thomas. That was kind of cool. Even One Republic sang a couple of songs acoustically, which was awesome. So in the end, it was a great show, but very pre-produced. And that's why I wondered, back to the sound check thing, I don't even know what the sound check would have been, because all of these things were not done live. She did not sing live. They were streaming live, but I don't know what the sound check would have encompassed. Maybe that day that they filmed those music videos, they did a sound check and that's what they showed. I don't really know. But anyway, I'm glad I didn't pay the $165 for that. But I did buy the t-shirt because the t-shirt looked really cool, but it won't come for 2 months. So a little disappointed with the Avril Lavigne concert as it was promoted and pitched, but you will not get any of that here. Anything I tell you that is coming up, it's coming up. We're doing it. It's happening. And after we do an interview, we're going to have a podcast plug. And I know I've been a little vicious in previous podcast plugs, but this week I've got a show that I love, and I'm going to tell you about it. It's a Hollywood show, and you'll hear it after the interview. So let's move forward from here to the interview with Troy Davidson. As you know, he played Kevin Cleaver on the new Leave It To Beaver, and he also was on Roseanne. In fact, he was one of the first cast members to be fired from the show. He'll tell that story because he got fired before Roseanne did. Ba-boom, boom. You'll hear that joke again later. So just giving you a little preview of some of the contents of the show so you know what to expect. Sitting to my left is Brian Nelson Jr. He'll be joining me for the interview. And let's get going. This is Troy Davidson from the new Leave It To Beaver on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. Troy Davidson, welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Nick. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you inviting me in.
I'm so glad you joined us. And in fact, it was really funny because I've been trying to track you down for a while. You have a very inactive Facebook page, so that did not work out. And then I had to take to internet stalking to actually get to you. But that's not above me because I've done it before, and I'll probably have to do it again.
Yeah, no, it was good you found me. I definitely not active in that space, and so I give you a lot of credit on your sleuth skills there on being able to find me. So well done.
Now, you didn't even know that we were doing reunions because I know some people are really into podcasts and some aren't. Have you had a chance to check out any of your past cast members' appearances? Have you listened to anybody?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so since you reached out, you're right. I had no idea any of this stuff was going on at this time, and pretty cool for you to kind of start getting on this and working through some of this stuff. And so I did go and listen to a couple. I wish I could have listened to everyone's, but it definitely hasn't happened yet. But I do plan on listening to everyone's, and I did listen to. I think I listened to Kalina Kiff's, and I listened to part of Kip Marcus's. And trying to think if I heard any of the other ones, but yeah, definitely heard a few.
Yeah,
so.
we really enjoyed, because obviously I was a kid when the show was on. Definitely loved talking with the kids. I like the adult interviews as well, but when we finally got John Snee on, that was a huge thing, and Kalina Kiff was very hard to track down as well. It was pretty exciting to get those guys back on the show.
Yeah, pretty cool.
I was kind of curious before we actually officially start, like, when's the last time you had an interview about your childhood career?
Never. This is my one and only. You're it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it never happened.
Wow.
That's why when you called, I was like, it was so out of left field for me. It was literally never thought it would happen in my lifetime, to be honest.
Well, here we are. So, Troy, I've got a friend who puts together reuniting like former child stars. He'll do like movie posters. So if you can recall the Little Rascals movie of, I think it was the 90s or something, all the kids' faces were on the front of that movie poster. So he got that group back together and redid the movie poster with those kids as adults. And he actually told me something that was kind of surprising. He says, you will never believe how much the youngest person on the show will actually remember. So do you have a lot of memories from your 20 plus episodes of the new Leave It To Beaver?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a long time ago. I think I started it, I was around age 4, turning 5 in that range. And so not a ton of memories in general of life at that age. But, definitely there's quite a few that stick out. And I remember definitely the LA set really well. I feel like I spent a lot of time there, and then have some really good memories of when we went out to Orlando. The show had already been going for a couple seasons prior to me getting there. So I kind of stepped into already what I consider to be a family. I mean, everyone there had some good relationships, and they welcomed me pretty well. And so had great memories of getting to meet a lot of the people, and a couple that stand out really had to do with kind of just playing on set. Mm-hmm. They had most everything there was not set up for a 4 or 5-year-old, that's for sure. So, I would have to kind of find things to do. And so I remember playing kind of baseball on the side of one of the sound stages. And they actually, in one of the soda shops, they had a little asteroid Asteroids video game, and so it was free. And I always thought that was the coolest thing because I got to go in there and play video games while I was waiting for either my scene or
Nice.
or in between my schooling time. So yeah, it was definitely very few, lot of memories, but definitely some that I can kind of recall.
Well, and having started acting so young, what was your starting push? Was it your own desire that you're like, hey, I want to be on TV, or was it your parents who said, you're really good, you should give this a shot? How did this start even for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So much to my sister's dismay, she was actually the one. She's a couple years older than me, and she started out at a very young age singing and dancing, and she was doing plays. And decided that she wanted to actually be involved in the business. And so she was looking to go get an agent, which she got somebody a contact through one of these acting classes that she started taking. And so I guess one of them that she was at, my sister was doing her class, and I was over on the side playing and doing whatever a 4-year-old does.
Right.
And I guess one of the people there came up and said, we want to get your son involved. He's definitely somebody we want to see in the business. And my mom kind of wasn't really into the idea at first. I was all boy, so I was wanting to just play and get dirty, and didn't think that I would do very well. And plus I was, I think, 4 at the time, and they said, no, you definitely have to. And so somehow that led to me getting the agent. And the very first interview that I went on, I booked a commercial the very first time. And
Wow.
so from there, I definitely went on a couple more interviews, but it wasn't long before I got New Leave It To Beaver. So I didn't do a whole lot of lead up to it, never took any acting classes. It was definitely not in my desire path or anything that my parents nor I was really going after. It just kind of really fell into place, and pretty quickly at that. So pretty interesting how that all laid out.
That's very cool. I've got a follow-up question, but first I want to let you know that Brian Nelson Jr. from the New Leave It To Beaver, Still the Beaver Facebook page has arrived just before we started the last question, so I'll let him say hello.
Good evening, Troy.
Hey,
how are
Brian,
you?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
So before I let Brian ask the next question, my only follow-up to that was going to be about your parents, because once you got the New Leave It To Beaver, they, of course, had knowledge of what that show was back probably when they were kids or whatever. Were they really super excited, probably like to the point where you couldn't understand why they were so excited to meet these people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that was my dad, actually, it was his favorite show growing up. So he had seen every single episode. It was a huge part of his life when he was younger. And so, that was definitely something that they were really excited about. And so they immediately, once they found out, I think they had some VHS tapes somewhere at a video store close to my house, and somehow we went and got a whole bunch of those episodes, and they made me watch like every single episode of the old seasons. And I think I did enjoy it, at least as much as I can remember, but black and white, and you're 4 years old, I don't know how much sank in, but it was definitely something that I had good memories of, and I think I liked the show a lot. And so it was pretty cool to kind of see those people from the old Leave It To Beaver and getting to meet them in person, and getting to meet Tony and Jerry and Barbara and Ken. After kind of seeing them as kids, my parents did a pretty good job of explaining the difference of the fact that they probably weren't going to look like they did, and that they had grown up and they were older. So, it was kind of neat to see them little and now older, and they were really nice to me and super sweet when I first met them. So I think that helped a lot and was a lot of fun.
Being the youngest cast member of the show, what was it like working with the other kids? John, Kip, Kalina. Kalina played your older sister. What was it like working with them? Did they include you in any, gatherings around the set? Were you able to talk to them at all, or was it more like you're the youngest child and, you didn't really interact with them at all?
I think it was a little of both. I mean, because I came in later, they had already had a couple seasons together, and so, they I think it had developed a pretty tight bond together already at that point. And so, me coming in as the little brother, I definitely filled that role pretty well. Me being a little brother already, I had a sister that was similar age, at least to some of the cast members, and so I think I kind of fit in and was pretty used to being the little younger brother. So I probably went and annoyed them at times, but I do remember Kalina was always really sweet. Every time I saw her, she would always make me give her a kiss on the cheek, and I always remember being, really bashful about doing that, but secretly probably loved it at the time. They were all really cool to me. And, I definitely remember, John and Kip being just guys I really looked up to that I just thought were super cool. And I just looked at them as like the coolest guys on the planet. And I just wanted to, be a lot like them and just like being around them. But for the most part, I would say they were kind of doing their thing. They were a lot older than me. So I was kind of watching some of their stuff from afar a lot of times.
Troy, even the best actors can have trouble remembering their lines. How did you, as a young boy, remember your lines for the show? Did you get a lot of direction on how they wanted you to deliver them?
Yeah, so one of my memories I do have is I would go into one of those little trailers, and it was actually my mom a lot of times that would help me with my lines. And maybe it's just being young and having little, sponge brains, but for whatever reason, I picked that up real quick. I never had a problem remembering my lines. Maybe if you talk to Brian Levant, he might have a different memory than that. But, I do think that at least from my recollections and what I was told is that I picked that up super fast, and I would just be able to regurgitate that really quickly. So I think that was a good thing for me because I know my mom at an early age, she always drilled into me that, that costs money. Everything they're doing in there is time and money, and I'm there to work. And so if I come in, I need to deliver on my lines, and I can't mess up and waste everybody's time and, ruin the scene, so to say. And so I picked that up pretty quick, and I always kind of was able to deliver, at least for the most part, not miss my lines too much. But it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun, and we played a game in it and just trying to remember things. And I think I would get like a piece of candy, or I'd be allowed to get like a new toy or something if I remembered everything the first time. So it was fun for me at that time.
Did you understand the quote unquote cool factor that you were on an iconic title? This was a revival of a show that had lasted at 30 years at that point. Did you understand, who Barbara Billingsley was? I'm sure your dad, kind of elbowed you in the ribs and let you know. What was your feeling when you got the job? Were you like, oh, cool, I get to work with Barbara Billingsley. I get to work with, Jerry Mathers. He's been in this business for, at that time, 30 years. So what was your thought on that?
Yeah, it's hard for anybody at that age to, I think, really grasp the true concept of that. But I do know that being able to see somebody on TV like that, especially in black and white, and then, we did watch the first couple seasons, too, before I joined the show as well. And so, getting to see kind of that progression of when they were young, and then getting to see them on the new Leave It To Beaver when they were older, and then getting to meet them in person, I did remember that being a really cool thing. And, going on to sets and getting to see kind of behind the scenes and how shows are made and movies are made, and getting to be on, walk around Universal Studios and see all the sound stages. I remember that was just really kind of mind-blowing at the time for me. And so, I don't know how much I really grasp about those particular individuals and Barbara and Jerry and Tony and kind of what that really meant. But I know my parents did, and my dad as well, really try to ingrain that in me, that these are not just, run-of-the-day normal people, although they are, but more from a famous standpoint. They really did say that they're pretty special. And so, I did go into it kind of having that belief and knowing that they're, something different than somebody else I just met off the street. But once I met them and started hanging out with them, they were just like everybody else, and they were just really good to me and treated me really well. So had a great relationship with them right off the bat, and they always treated me like I was their grandson or their son or something like that, and so it made it really easy. But I don't think I really understood it until I got a little bit older, and then I was able to kind of look back on it and say, wow, that was pretty special.
Yeah.
So how long did it take, do you think, where you figured, boy, I got to work on this show that, like you were younger and you didn't realize the magnitude. How long did it take for you to get it?
I remember that, so I definitely did kind of some other things after Leave It To Beaver. And because that progression was so quick, just in the beginning, first interview, I get a commercial, and right after that, it was pretty soon after I got Leave It To Beaver, that it was, I didn't really understand how difficult it was to get work. And so as I got older, I think it might have been John Snee. I heard part of his podcast, and he was mentioning that he would get out of school and his mom would say, you got to go on these interviews. And I remember very, very vividly having to do that. And my mom would have this backpack. And the backpack had, toys and snacks and things in it. And I knew anytime I got out of school, if that backpack was sitting there, that meant I was driving up to L.A., which was about an hour and a half drive. And I knew that I had some interviews that day. And so there was kind of a point in time, I was probably in about maybe second grade, first or second grade maybe, and we were having to go on a lot. So I went on a ton of interviews. And, didn't get stuff right off the bat again. And so I think probably when I was maybe eight or 9 is when I really started realizing, this business isn't as easy as it looks. And, I think that's when I looked back and said, wow, that was so easy with the other ones. And that was a pretty big show. And I'm just trying to get a commercial right now. This is way more difficult than I thought. So, I think varying degrees as I got older to really grasp that, but that was probably my first recollection of really, really trying to understand what that was like.
One of the biggest fans in the group that is in Brian's group is Mark Bradley, and he is in Florida, so he loves the fact that the show moved to Florida and wants to know a little bit about that transition for you. What was it like when you had to move far from home? Did you kind of get homesick a little bit? And, we know that some cast members got apartments by the studio. What was your situation? Where were you living? Who was with you? Walk us through having to move from LA to Florida for a little bit.
So my situation might have been a little bit easier than some of the other cast members. My mom wasn't working at the time, and so we definitely had some juggling at home to try to make sure that my sister was taken care of and that my dad was able to get to work. So my grandparents came and kind of moved into my house back at home and helped my dad with my sister, and so we kind of fairly easily fixed that situation. And so moving out, it was just exciting and fun for me. I was not at an age where I had a ton of friends and people that I was going to be missing a ton. And so I would say the hardest part was having to, just be out of school and having to do the homeschool or the set teachers. That was definitely a little bit different as opposed to having the actual school to be able to go to. But yeah, we had an apartment that was pretty close to the sound stage. I remember I got a Nintendo system right when I first got out there, my first Nintendo. And so I was pretty pumped. I got to go play some video games whenever we weren't on set. And there was Universal Studios, which I got to go check out. We went to Disney World quite often. So, for me, it was a dream come true. I was having a blast. And, my mom, I think, enjoyed it too. It was almost like a mini vacation for her. She got to go out there, and she only had one kid to look after as opposed to two. And, I remember that the actual stage, the sets, there was nothing out there. It was dirt lots. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't real necessarily impressive being out at the sound stages, but all the other things to do in Florida. The weather was great. It was, all these fun parks to go to. So I just personally had fond memories of it. I thought it was a great situation. But I, missed my dad, missed my mom, but I'm sorry, missed my sister, but they did come out and visit quite a few times. So it was a good time for me. So,
do you have a show that sticks out to you as a favorite? Then do you have one that you didn't like?
Ooh, good question. That's going back in the memory bank. So I think I heard one of the podcasts where somebody was mentioning that somebody's posting all the old episodes on there. I have not had the chance to go back and look at those. All the VHS tapes of me back when I was younger that we had in our own personal collection, unfortunately, we never converted those to DVDs. So I don't have anything of those old videotapes of my personal stuff. And so all the seasons before that, I don't think we ever had on tape. So I probably haven't seen any of those episodes for 25, 30 years, to be honest. But I do remember one just off the top of my head where there was like a bulldozer that was chasing John Snee, if I remember correctly. And I don't remember what episode it was, but I just remember that I think it like ran over a house and bulldozed a house or something. And I remember watching that episode with eyes just, big as my head, just going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And so at that age, I remember that was a pretty big one for me, and that I wanted to do something like that. I remember when I joined the show, and I think Brian Levan, I think I even made the comment to him, like, hey, I want to bulldoze something too. And I think he made some joking remark like, yeah, maybe later in another season we'll try that again. So that's all I can remember, though.
What was it like for you when that show finally ended? Was it upsetting? Were you okay with it? What was hard about the end?
Yeah, I was pretty bummed. I remember that they made it to 100 episodes, and they actually had a party for reaching 100 episodes. And so I think we had a bowling party, and everybody went into a bowling alley, and we had like this big fun party. And I just remember having a blast. And I got this Leatherman's jacket, which I still have to this day and somewhere in my garage. But I remember just having so much fun. And now thinking back, and probably there was rumblings that it was going to end soon, but I don't think I knew at the time. And so when found out not too much longer after that it was going to be ending, I remember I was definitely pretty disappointed. I wanted to keep going because I had kind of entered late into the game. I had only been there, I think, 2 seasons, and everyone else had 2 prior to me. So I was kind of hoping to get a little bit older and be more part of the show. But, it was what it was. So it was a little bittersweet. But, I was happy for the time I was there, at least.
I think Brian had the same hopes that you did. I think he wanted he wanted the cast to move on in their lives as the Cleavers. He wanted you to take on the baseball cap and be the Beaver character. He wanted, John Snee to be the Wally, the older brother, quote unquote. And yeah, it's disappointing because it kind of just where it stopped was, like in a balance. You were tied up with no ending. In fact, Beaver almost gets married, and then he ends up with a girlfriend, and that's all we know.
Yeah, I felt like that it was never really closed out appropriately in that regard, right? I guess we were in the wrong time era. If this had been this time frame now with Netflix and everything, probably would have been able to do more seasons in a closer time frame together, and been able to release them a lot closer together, and maybe they would have been able to kind of piece that out more methodically. But it's too bad that we didn't get to kind of have a coup de grace, a finale there that really would have tied everything together. But yeah, so be it. It is what it is, I guess, right?
Well, after the show ended, you did go on to a couple other TV series, which I want to get into a little bit, because one of them was a favorite of mine from the 80s and 90s, Roseanne. And I remember this episode. You played a young Todd Bowman. He was the son of Roseanne's neighbor that she was clashing with. Do you remember any stories from being on the set of Roseanne?
I do. Yeah, that one I have very clear memories of that one. I think I was obviously a little bit older at that point, but that one was really, really good time for me. Funny enough, me and Michael Fishman really got along. Him and I just hit it off right off the bat. And I think he was happy to have someone his age on set because I don't think there was a lot of that going on for him there.
Right.
And, just him and I clicked immediately. And so him and I were just playing, just having a blast, messing around. And there was actually a scene where we were supposed to be up above the stage, and there was kind of some stairs. It was that living room set, so when they're all sitting on the couch, it would have been those stairs that come right behind the couch in the living room. And we were up behind in there, and somehow we got a hold of pillows, and we were having like a pillow fight up there, hitting each other with pillows. And, apparently that's, I guess, part of the reason, funny enough, that I didn't get asked back. I guess it came back to my agent that I was not well behaved enough, according to Roseanne or some of the others, that they didn't want me to come back because me and Michael Fishman got in too much trouble together. So, they did, I think, have another episode at one point where he did come back, that character, but they had somebody else as opposed to me in that scene. So
Troy Davidson got fired from Roseanne before Roseanne did. That's so sad.
Yeah, but that one was unique because that one was live audience. So I had never done one, and that was the only live audience experience I had. So I remember that definitely added a very different dynamic. Right before the show starts, they have everybody come out and they introduce you, and all my family was in the stands there, and a bunch of people. And I remember that was very, very exciting to know that all those people were watching live. And so that was probably the biggest memory I have of that experience.
So was that a shock to you then? Working without an audience for all that time, and then all of a sudden you go to the studio and you get this part for this show. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, it's in front of the audience. I mean, what was that like for you?
I mean, whenever you're filming, there is still people around, right? You have all of the sound technicians and the camera crews, and there's always quite a few people around, but they're all professionals. They're all there doing a job for the most part. And so it just kind of feels more like work in that regard. And getting in front of a live audience, that there's just random people and fans, and I had family there, and so it was definitely way more nerve-wracking. And so at least for me, it helped a lot because me and Michael were having so much fun together and playing that it kind of took a lot of the nerves off. But you definitely didn't want to mess up in front of a live audience versus just a director and the camera crew kind of thing. So it added a fun dynamic. I would say it was fun. I can imagine for like a real serious actor that was, playing a more intense part, that would be really hard. But I was still young enough to where I was able to kind of take it in stride. But if I had to do that now, like at my age now, that would definitely be a very, very difficult thing at least I would think so.
That's pretty funny how that works, hey? It's almost like it's an ignorance thing as a child. When you get older, it's like, oh yeah, this would be tough.
Well, you get a sense of responsibility. You
right.
feel the weight of it.
When you're young like that, ignorance is bliss, right? So a lot of things you maybe either don't comprehend or don't know, a lot of times plays in your favor.
So you were on a revival of a show from the past. And as we know, Roseanne did come back in the last couple of years to be in a television show revival for us to watch. Did you watch the revival of Roseanne when it came back?
I didn't, no.
Okay.
I got two little ones at home and pretty busy life schedule right now. And, working kids, the TV gets dominated by probably kid shows more than anything. And so, it was not one that I was super excited to go watch. Plus, Roseanne's had such a really good ability over the years, maybe not since she got in trouble, but there's just always been those episodes on, I feel like, on various cable networks. Almost any time of the day, I feel like if you just wanted to watch an episode of Roseanne, you could have found it on some network at some point, probably. So over the years, I've been able to kind of watch definitely quite a few of those as reruns. So when the new one came around, I knew that there was going to be all of the political things behind it. It just didn't make it to the top of my list. So
that's understandable.
In the early 1990s, we were introduced to the animated version of Back to the Future. You voiced Vern Newton Brown. Was voice acting easier for you than being on screen?
I would say that of all my memories of being any bit involved in the business, doing voiceovers was by far my favorite. It was, I guess a lot easier in terms of prep work. I would get a script mailed to me, a week before, just like it would be with any other show I was on. But that one, I really didn't need to memorize the lines, right? Because you get that script in front of you and you just get to read it. So of course I would read them and practice them and things like that. But you didn't have that concern about having a bad hair day. You don't have to worry about how you look, and definitely don't have to worry about memorizing anything. And you're just in a quiet black room with a little glass wall ahead of you with a director in there, and sometimes you'd have other couple people sitting in the room with you that were also doing some work on that scene. But for the most part, you're in a dark room by yourself with a stand and a microphone. And so I really enjoyed that. That part for me was, I could have done that indefinitely. I really enjoyed doing voiceover work. And Back to the Future was so great because it was fairly big in terms of the people involved in it, all the way from the top down. And so got treated really well. We had the top of the line sound stages and the top of the line equipment, and everybody was just really professional and great to work with. I got to work with Dan Castellaneta, who was
that's the Simpsons,
from the Simpsons,
right?
There.
Yeah,
Homer.
Yep.
And I remember at the time Simpsons was at one of its peaks, at least for my generation. So it was like super cool to be able to spend time with him, and he would do some Homer impressions for me at times, which was just awesome. I really enjoyed that. And I just thought it was a great experience, and would recommend it to anybody.
So when you're a child, you said you didn't really have to memorize lines, but you have to read them. But when you're doing voiceover work like that, you have to have a sense of emotion. You got to project your voice properly. So if you're a young child and if you're not memorizing the script and you don't know the lines, and if you're reading the lines, how does a young child? I mean, I'm an adult and I'm a very good reader, but we do these interviews and I don't read the words right off our script. I mean, because otherwise it wouldn't come out naturally. So how do you do that as a child when you're working on an animated TV show?
Yeah, so the director sometimes would be able to kind of give you direction. So there were definitely times where when reading the script through the week, I wouldn't know just based off reading it kind of what their expectations were. As you guys have maybe read scripts before in the past, sometimes your vision of how that is playing out would be different than the director's. And since I'm not getting to see the footage beforehand, it's sometimes a little bit of guesswork. I would assume from their end, too, sometimes they kind of want to hear what your take it is, and maybe they would take your version versus what they had. So a lot of times I would just read what I thought maybe would be right, and then they would maybe come back and say, oh, maybe you should try it this way or do it this way. And so, I would just kind of go with what I thought sounded natural and was what I thought would be correct. And it would just really depend on, I think, whether they liked my first take or if they wanted me to do it differently. It was a lot like acting. Acting is the same way. You read it on the script, and you have to have the facial expressions and the body motions. I would definitely use that a lot of times. I would talk with my hands and try to move my body, because I think that would help me get the words out and say it the way I thought it was meant to be said. And there were times where it probably was a struggle for the way they would want me to say it back, and then I thought I was saying it back the way that they wanted me to, and it just wasn't clicking that way. But that wasn't, at least for me, very often. So it would just be kind of once in a while that was the case. But I just always felt it to be fun, is kind of trying to mimic the way they wanted me to say it, or kind of to put my own spin on how I thought it would sound well.
Now, no one could grow up in the 90s without seeing videos from Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. They made a ton, dozens of straight-to-VHS videos during the height of their fame from Full House. And I'm bringing that up because you were in a sleepover party video, and I know that you were only 10 or 11 at the time, but were you excited to be cast in one of their, lines of videos that they were doing?
Yeah, I remember that was a pretty big deal because I too had seen those videos, and so I was well aware of what those were.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up watching Full House, and so I was very well aware of the Olsen twins. I had never met them, so our paths had never crossed, and any interactions that I had in interviews or any functions that I was at, so I never had met them in person. So I was excited to always meet another child actor, and I think I was about 4 or 5 years older than them at the time.
Right.
Well, still would be, I guess, right? But I think they were probably still on the younger side, and so I was excited just to be able to share with them my experiences and see if they had any, questions for me. Not that I was anything special, but just always was willing to answer any questions they had. And so I when I got on set, I definitely talked to them for a bit, but I didn't end up imparting any wisdom on them. That's for sure. They were probably well ahead of me and didn't need any of my advice. That's for sure. So,
well, this whole thing kind of begs my curiosity. First of all, I have 8-year-old twin girls right now that are identical, and I'm actually considering soon showing them maybe a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie, because I know there were several of those that I think now they would enjoy because my girls really do look like each other. What were they like when? Like, were they very confident in their abilities? I mean, they grew up on television, essentially, but did they give the persona like, I know everything and, this is how we're going to do it? Like, what was the feel on the set? Were they calling the shots because it was their video?
To be honest, I really, my remembrance of them was a little more on the shy side. So I didn't feel as though that they were, trying to own anything or really trying to run the show. They didn't seem pompous or anything like that to me. They were nice to me, but actually more on the quieter side. So they kind of had each other, obviously. So kind of, as you've probably seen with your twins, they always have a buddy with each other. My sister has twin girls too, and I think it helps when you always have a buddy with you. So they probably were pretty used to actors coming in and out in their scenario, and they were nice to me and talked with me, but we didn't. It wasn't like it was with Michael from Roseanne, where him and I hit it off and we're hanging out in the background. I talked to him for a little bit, and we hung out in kind of the waiting area, but I didn't spend a ton of time with them. It was pretty quick, I would say.
Well, as the girls grew up, they became these, business moguls. And I always wondered, at what age did that start? What age were they directing? Nope, that's going to go here and all of that. So I was just curious to see when you had met them when they were like 9 or 8 or whatever, if they had already had a sense of the feel that they were going to be moguls. Because at the time, that was quite a lucrative little field they put themselves into, creating all these VHS videos. I remember working at a video store in college and constantly stocking these, videos of that they had done, and there was dozens of them. It was crazy.
And my sisters, they are twins, and they're actually the same age as Ashley and Mary-Kate. And the funny thing is, I don't know if it's because I'm their brother, but to me, they don't look alike. Like, I don't know, Nick. Do you look at your daughters and say, "Yeah, I know that's that one"?
Well, I do. I am guilty of getting them confused sometimes
because I've showed pictures of my sisters and say, do they look alike? Like, which one is which? And they'll be like, oh, they look exactly the same. And then to me, it's like, no.
But you're around them too much.
Not really.
Troy, that was your last credited role that I could even find. So did roles stop coming to you at that point, or did you want to leave the business?
So it was, a combo. So I basically, funny little tidbit, I got really close to being on Tool Time. So
no way.
Cool.
Home Improvement.
I was in Home Improvement. I'm sorry.
That's
not
okay.
Tool Time, Home Improvement.
That was a fictitious show on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was literally down to the final wire. I'd gone to I don't even know how many interviews, and it was really close. And I'd probably done 15 different interviews, gone into various boardrooms with a ton of people and read lines, and I was there. They basically were back and forth with me and oh gosh, his name is he was the youngest son on
Zachary. Nope. Taron
Zachary
Noah
Bryan.
Smith or something, right?
Yeah, Terrence Noah Smith, that was his name. You got it. That's right. It was basically between me and him, and they had already decided that they wanted, the other two boys had already secured their roles, and so it was between me and him, and it was really close, and I really wanted it because it was right up my alley. We had read the scripts, and they just thought they were so perfect. My dad was a lot like... oh gosh, what's his name?
Tim Allen.
Lead on that. Tim Allen, thank you. Yeah, he was identical to Tim Allen, really kind of goofy and funny. My dad had done construction, so he had all the tools, and it was just like a perfect fit. And so I was really excited for it, and they obviously didn't end up giving it to me. The reasoning was I was told, don't know how true it was because I was taller than sorry, I'm not doing good with names here, guys.
I can name them.
Son.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas or
JTT. Thank you.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
So you couldn't be the little brother if you're taller.
Yep, I was taller than JTT, and they didn't want the youngest boy being taller than the middle, and they had already secured JTT being the middle. They didn't want to make him the younger or the youngest. So
no, they're already
they
printing
decided.
magazine covers with his face on it by then, probably.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it. So I didn't get that, and so I was definitely kind of a little bit bummed from that. And I was really kind of focusing on my voiceover work at that point because that was really where I enjoyed my time. And so I booked another series called Cowboys of Moo Mesa and did some of that. And I was really having a good time doing voiceover work as much as I could. And I was starting to kind of fade away from wanting to be on camera. I really wanted to play more sports and kind of be involved with my friends. So I think the timing kind of just worked out well where I decided I didn't really want to be on screen anymore and just really wanted to focus on voiceovers. And then shortly after, voice started changing. And so going in to do voiceover work when it's all, up and down and all over the place didn't work out so well. So I think that was a good time for me to transition out. So...
All right. Well, that's a good, because I always wondered, I'm like, he just disappeared. Once the credits stop, it's just like, where did they go?
I think part of it, too, is I didn't necessarily enjoy being in the limelight. It was not my first choice to be the center of attention. I do think that a lot of the people that are in the business really like to be that center stage and like the bright lights. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think that was really me. And so I always felt a little bit more of trying to pull away from being quote unquote famous. That really wasn't what I was aiming for, striving to be. And so I think it ended up working out well that I didn't get to be on Home Improvement because I do feel like that might not have been the right place for me. It would have changed my whole life trajectory and would have put me in a different stratosphere in terms of fame that I don't know that I really wanted for my life. So I think it worked out well.
Well, you segue really well because my next question is what I ask all of my guests here on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast, and that is about encounters with your fans. Now, I know you just said that you weren't really looking to be in the limelight or anything, and I know you were really young, but do you remember or have any memories of fans freaking out over meeting you, or any kind of weird encounters you might have had?
There was one. I was at the LA Zoo. It was in between, I think, some auditions that I had or something that day, and my mom took me there, and we were just walking around, and a group of probably about 10 to 12 kids, girls and boys that were about my age, maybe a few years older, all came running up and wanted me to start signing pamphlets and things that they had. And I remember I'm very taken aback by it, because I did not consider myself anything special or, any bit of famous. I didn't really think very many people knew outside of kind of my world of, my friends and family and maybe a few others here and there. But it was very overwhelming for me. And I remember I did kind of sign a couple pamphlets, and then I think it was a little much for me, and I think my mom recognized and kind of pulled me out of there. So outside of that, I wasn't much of a big deal, just due to being kind of small parts on some of these shows. I didn't get, people coming after me a lot, but there were some fan letters I did get. I heard some of the other people on their podcast say that they did as well get, fan letters. I'm sure Kip probably got the most.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, him and Kalina, I'm sure probably got the most. But for me, I got a few, and I remember thinking that was pretty cool. I was pretty stoked to get some letters of people writing me things, and I didn't get a lot of them, so I got a few, and I just remember reading them, thinking that was pretty cool, that somebody, across the country or somewhere nowhere's near me, took the time to write something out and send it to me directly. I remember that was pretty special.
Do you still have your fan letters that you've gotten over the years?
That's a good question. I'd have to check through some. I have this, this chest out in my garage where I really tried to keep all of my paraphernalia from that, just to be able to hand down to kids, or maybe look through one day.
Right.
I remember I looked through that stuff probably about maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and was pretty amazed at seeing some of that stuff, because you kind of forget about it. And I don't remember seeing some letters in there, but there might be a couple, 1 or 2.
Does that box have that Letterman sweater? Did you have? And when they had that Letterman sweater for you, was it made for little Kevin, or was it made for like bigger
Beaver
when you get older? Yeah.
It was made for me, so it was my size. So yeah, it was super cool. It was like that blue felt, and it had the white leather sleeves on it, and it had the insignia of the new Leave It To Beaver written in the back, embroidered in there. And I think I got like a pin that said 100 episode anniversary, and so I still have it, and I plan on keeping that. And definitely my son's actually getting pretty close to where he might be able to fit into it, and so if I do end up doing, I'll take a picture of that and send it to you.
It does sound like we need a
great.
throwback photo session for sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So you mentioned you have a son, and I know you have one other child, because you said that before. But bring us up to speed on your life now. So I'm assuming you're married, and maybe talk a little bit about your career if you want.
Yeah. I've stayed in SoCal pretty much all my life, so pretty lucky to still be in Orange County today. Played soccer and ice hockey. That's kind of one of the reasons I stepped out of the business, is I was wanting to do that a lot more. So played that all the way through college, and now live still in Orange County. And I got a beautiful wife who's a nurse who I met in college. We've been together since, 2004. So we're about 16 years now. And I got a beautiful daughter who's turned 7 next week, and got a son who's 4.5.
Awesome.
So pretty blessed life. And then I'm a financial advisor now, so I follow in the stock market. So I guess kind of along the lines of Frank Bank a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Of his
Yeah,
career.
there you go.
So kind of funny.
Have any of your clients recognized you from being a child star? Has that ever come up?
No, never once. Nope.
Okay, none of your colleagues either, huh?
No, never once. It's every once in a while I definitely get people that over the years have said, "Gosh, you remind me so much of somebody, and you look like somebody I know, but I just can't place my finger on it." But no, I really think because I did that at such a young age, and never really made it big time. I just don't think that I get associated a lot with that, but which is probably a good thing for me. I don't know that I would be wanting that, at least at this stage in my life, whereas maybe others would. That's probably not for me.
How about when you were younger, when you were doing the show? Did people recognize you then?
Sometimes, yeah. There'd be some times where I'd be somewhere and I'd hear Kevin, and somebody would point to me, and I would either wave back or I tuck my head behind my mom and run away, depending upon who's calling my name. But it wasn't a lot, but every once in a while I would get called Kevin. Definitely more at school. Everybody knew what I did there, and all of my circle of friends and the people who lived close to me, they all knew, and so I definitely got quite a bit of teasing and joking, and people bringing it up a lot at school and a lot around my the people who lived close to me. So I would say that's where I would get a lot of it.
Brian's going to finish our interview today with one last question that's going to put you right back in Mayfield.
Let's put our writing hat on for a minute and think what would be happening in Mayfield today if they were to redo the show. And believe me, we've begged Brian, but he says no. But if they would, this is just for fun. What would Kevin be doing today? What would the Cleaver family be up to? Where would you be working? Where would you be living? Now you have to have the two houses in play here. So what do you think?
Great question. I could definitely envision, because that was such a wholesome show, and they really tried to, not like TV today, right, where everything's just so pushing the envelope on things. I would just see, them still all living close to each other. I could see just a bunch of grandkids, so probably like, I don't know, 20 grandkids running around, and it'd just be kind of a chaos scene with just tons of kids running around, and kind of like a more wholesome Modern Family type of setup with maybe a little less diversity.
and your dad, your dad would be a judge because he was a lawyer. Obviously, Wally was a lawyer, so he would be successful. So he would have to be a judge.
There you go. Yeah, I think that'd be a perfect fit. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that's definitely not my realm of expertise in terms of that creative spark. But I would love to hear different versions of that. Now, I would get a kick out of all that. That'd be great.
They're all out there for you. Now, this is, you mentioned at the top of the interview that this was your very first look back to your career for an interview. So did we leave anything out? Did we miss any really good stories from your childhood, or anything that would be something you'd want to tell the fans of the show, even that are still fans today?
Gosh, I just remember that there was such a good synergy with all the actors and with everybody on the set. I just remember them all just treating me so well. So watching any old episodes and seeing that, and just knowing that there was, really that good synergy between everybody, I think makes any show better from a personal standpoint. If all the actors don't like each other, and behind the scenes or there's tons of fighting and all this stuff, I think that kind of ruins the show sometimes for me. Just knowing that everybody was, really down to earth and such good people. I actually learned a lot from learning about Kip. I had no idea that he was living with Brian Levant at one point, and had all the different family dynamics going on. So I think everybody else probably has a lot better stories than I. But I would just say it was a pretty cool, unique show that I think wish could have gone longer. Right.
Oh, I really wish it did. I really wish it did.
I appreciate you guys doing this. I know this is probably a labor of love for you guys, right? But
it is.
It's very unique. So I give you guys a lot of credit. I was telling my wife just this the other day that you guys going through these types of old '80s shows. And have you guys seen that show on Netflix right now, Red Oaks?
No. What's that?
I'm sorry, it's not Netflix. It's Amazon Prime. That's what it's on.
Oh, okay.
But It's about growing up in the mid '80s, this in New Jersey.
I've read about it. I've ran into it, but I haven't watched it yet. But yes, I caught the synopsis, and yes, I definitely want to take a look at that one.
Well, I've been for whatever reason, any shows that come on that kind of are those '80s time frame, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. That's getting a very nostalgic time frame. I'm starting to understand, what our parents would do when they were younger, watching all these old shows because it was nostalgic for them. I think that 80s time frame is definitely in early '90s is starting to make that go around right now, right?
Well, I definitely think it's what our parents thought of, like the '60s and early '70s. The Brady Bunch era. There was a lot of problems back then, but you don't remember those when you watch those shows thinking that was pretty carefree time. And it's like, no, actually it wasn't. It was chaotic in its own way.
Exactly.
So. Yep. Yeah, that's what I mean, is that I'm getting to that age now, and
right.
Maybe you guys are too.
We're the same age pretty much,
guys. But, yeah, there you go. So that's why I think it's perfect timing, because I know a lot of people are the same way. We'll be sitting around grabbing drinks with friends or whatever, and you hear a lot of people bring up, oh, you remember that show we would watch, at this age? And, remember Vicky from, Out of This World? And, it's just funny
right.
to hear everyone's kind of take on some of these old shows. And so I think you guys are doing great work. So appreciate you guys doing this.
No, thank you. It's our pleasure, definitely.
All right. Thanks again for joining us and taking this hour out of your day for us. This was a great episode, and I know a lot of fans are looking forward to it. So you delivered.
Well, thank you, man. I like I said, I'm pretty obscure there on the list of celebrities. Hope you get some bigger people than me, but I appreciate you finding me on here, and thanks for the time, guys.
Thank
it means
you.
a lot.
Take care. Have a great night.
Take care, Troy.
All right, you too. Take care, guys.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.
Well, Brian, that was pretty cool. Troy Davidson. We finally got him on the show.
Yeah, and you know what's really cool?
What?
We're the first ones to ever talk to him about his career.
I know, that's amazing.
That's really cool.
Was very floored that nobody's ever wanted to talk to him about his acting career before. But I don't know. Anyway, great time with Troy Davidson. We're going to have at least one more episode on the new Leave It To Beaver show coming up for you in the next few weeks. It'll be here soon. But we got a lot of crazy, great guests coming up, and it's going to be hard to fit everybody in before the end of the year. I was just mentioning that it's going to be November, and I'm going to almost fill my guest count for the year as far as scheduling. So it's crazy. Good times here at the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. We're very busy, and we do thank all of our publicists who are constantly pitching guests to us, getting them on the show. Couldn't do it without you. So if you're listening, thank you. Brian, it's been a great time. Thanks again for being here for the interview. But before I leave you guys this week, we have one more piece of business to take care of.
Nothing better than free advertising. Here is this week's podcast plug.
I did find a new podcast. This one's called Calling Old Hollywood, hosted by a woman named Kat Lively. Kat has a podcast that focuses on personal and intimate encounters with actors, actresses, and musicians from the golden age of Hollywood. Now, the golden age has a very wide span because it could go anywhere from the beginning of Hollywood in the 20s up until like the 80s, based on who she's had as a guest. And the guests have been really fascinating, really good. I do have a few critiques of this podcast, but overall, I really enjoy it. I think Kat has really good questions. Let's get into this podcast. I want to play a little bit of it for you because I think you're going to enjoy it too, and I feel a subscription coming in your future.
Welcome to another episode of Calling Old Hollywood. I'm your host, Kat Lively, and with us this week is Carrie Bible. Hello, Carrie.
To start things off, one of the first things you might think of is, well, the audio quality isn't that great. But there's a reason for that, because Kat is with her guest, Carrie, in a cemetery. And the reason is because Carrie Bible is a cemetery tour guide, which I thought was fascinating. What a great idea to get stories of old Hollywood by going into a cemetery. I wouldn't have come up with that. And for that, you're brilliant, Kat. But let's get into the interview. She starts out kind of saying why they're in the cemetery, and this is where I have a problem with the podcast. Can you guess why?
We're sitting here because we're basically having breakfast with Close Up, the cemetery cat, right now at DeMille's grave. Mm-hmm. About a year ago, he started just showing up on my... Okay, no, we're not going to scratch my pants. Hang on.
Now, that was a funny moment, I'm sure, for Kat and for Carrie. But for us as a listening audience, that all probably should be edited out. And I know that this is sort of an uncut conversation, but editing would throw this podcast into a whole new category because it does provide some great stories. I love hearing about old Hollywood, especially Judy Garland. And they talk about the fact that Judy Garland was moved recently from a cemetery, I think in New York, out to California in this Hollywood Forever cemetery. And this is a little tidbit you wouldn't have known without listening to the podcast, because we can't go back in time and ask Judy Garland about her experiences with her fans. The ironic thing is her fans are still having experiences with her.
People love seeing Judy. You know, it's been really powerful having her on the tour, because I've had people walk in that room and just tears start pouring down their face. I've seen people in there sobbing. I've had people come on the tour, walk in that room, and they just burst into song at the top of their lungs.
Kat knows how to pick her guests because they have great stories. And like I mentioned, we're talking about Judy Garland and how she got moved to the cemetery. And Carrie Bible comes up with a great anecdote.
Judy is not really acknowledged for it as much as she should be, but she had an incredible sense of humor. And I think she would laugh. She'd be like, really? Dead for decades, and I'm making a comeback. Like, I think she would find it hysterically funny.
As I mentioned before, the host of the show, Kat Lively, comes up with some great questions, and this is one of them because it could go in a lot of different directions. But there's only one problem with the way that this clip appeared on the podcast. Check it out.
One of the questions I asked on my podcast that I started a few months ago ties into this. If you could be any character from The Wizard of Oz, who would you be?
What a great question, because that could go in a lot of different directions. If you think about the lion needing courage, maybe somebody grew up not feeling confident in themselves, they could tell that story. Or maybe the scarecrow who needed a brain because maybe you felt like you were behind in school and you could relate that way. Or the Tin Man who wanted a heart. Maybe you had a hard time being loved as a child or getting love, and it could feed into that. And you really could relate to that character. This is the answer that was immediately delivered.
Oh, gosh. I wasn't expecting that question. Hang on.
Come on, edit this out. Edit it out. Come on, please. Cut it down.
I don't know.
It's hard, right?
I don't have a better answer to that.
So, very disappointing answer. And if a guest for me doesn't have an answer to a question, unfortunately, I got to cut out the whole thing. It was a fabulous question, Kat, but with no answer, you have to chop it out. And I know it's disappointing, but one of the things that podcast audiences hate, at least I hate, is when my time is being wasted. And even those long breaths that come between a question and an answer, I have to take them out because I don't want the audience to have to wait for the guest to think of the answer. I want them to think that the guest had the answer ready to go and just spit it out there. So that's the only thing that bothered me about the show. The guest was fascinating, and so was the content. Kat quickly rebounded, though, because she came up with this question, which I think is brilliant.
What do you think the biggest difference between horror, classic horror, and modern is?
And why is that a brilliant question? Because there's a huge difference between the horror movies of even the 80s when I felt like horror was at its best and now. And the guest, Carrie Bible, has a great answer for that question.
In horror, I admit. I don't like the torture porn. Remember a few years back when Saw movies were like the rage?
Right, yeah.
I would not be able to sit through one of those. I just... To me, what you don't see is so much more terrifying than what you do see.
And that is an answer that the audience wants to hear, because that's so true. Right now, it's all about the gore and the blood and all this stuff, but we're not really getting scared like we were. I think the best current scary movie is The Strangers, where that was like a terror movie. And I think that was probably the last best scary movie that there's been in recent years. But anyway, let's wrap this up. The podcast, again, that we're talking about that I really strongly encourage you to subscribe to is called Calling Old Hollywood, hosted by Kat Lively. Her guest wraps up the show with this, which is so true. And in fact, I have a project that I'm trying to get off the ground desperately. A lot of you found the project and started emailing me actually about it. And I can't say anything yet because it's not like final. But this clip sums up why I want to do this project.
When I see younger people, though, really be so passionate about these films and about these artists, I can't tell you how much joy and inspiration that gives me.
Thank you.
And it makes me think, okay, so me, my colleagues that are older than me, we're not going to live forever, but this stuff will, because you are going to keep that torch going. You will encourage younger people, younger than yourself, to keep that torch going. And that just warms my little heart and makes me so happy to know that, 100 years from now, James Dean will be discussed. There will be girls visiting his grave. I mean,
yes.
That's going to happen.
Yes.
I have no doubt that will happen.
Absolutely.
Same with Judy. Same with a lot of these people.
She's so right, because we are engrossed by some of these stories, whether it be a sudden death or a tragedy or that kind of thing, of even somebody's whole life, like Judy Garland. We're always going to go back to visit those graves, to think about those stories, and what a great show posted by Kat Lively. Calling Old Hollywood can be found at their website, callingoldhollywood.buzzsprout.com, and you can catch all their episodes there, as well as on all podcast apps like Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and Spotify. Kat, I hope you enjoyed my little review of your show. I love your show. I'm going to keep listening, and I hope others do too. You can follow us on social media. On Facebook, we're at Fancounters. You can also email us at hello@fancounters.com. If you have a celebrity that you want me to put on the show, let me know. If I get them on, I'll make you part of the episode as well. We have another celebrity guest coming up next week. We hope you tune in. We release episodes every Friday, and if you're bored between now and next Friday, we have an entire backlog of episodes that you can listen to. Over 149 more are all there waiting for you. And if you like the new Leave It To Beaver, we've reunited the whole entire cast and crew on past episodes. Just search for your favorite cast member, and you will find an interview from them on Fancounters. That's going to do it for me. My name's Nick. Join me next Friday for another celebrity guest, and I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.